So this December marks a shocking 25 years since Chris Farley passed away. He was only 33 years old. Prior to his death, 7 years prior to his death, Chris Farley hit it big with Saturday Night Live. At the time Saturday Night Live had him, it really had a big slump in the ratings throughout the 1980s. But thanks to Eddie Murphy and Phil Hartman, Saturday Night Live held on by a thread. At the beginning of the 90s, things were opening up. People rediscovered the series. They started noticing all these new sketches, and they had cast members that were making things funny again. And some of those cast members were, well, like I said, Phil Hartman. Then came Mike Myers at the end of the 80s. You got Dana Carvey, you had Adam Sandler, Chris Rock, and David Spade. But in the 90s, no Saturday Night Live cast member shined brighter than Chris Farley. Chris Farley, growing up, kids, his brothers and sisters, when they were kids, they described him as being like a wind-up toy. He did anything for a laugh. Anything. He did struggle with weight early on in life, according to family. He was little, kind of obese since childhood, but he kind of figured out a way to make people laugh at his size before they made fun of him for his size. I mean, he just nose dove into comedy. By the time he was in his 20s, he was living in Chicago and working at the improvisational comedy group Second City. Second City is notorious for having an army of comedy icons, including John Belushi, John Candy, Bill Murray, and Andrea Martin. Then, of course, as we know, Chris Farley auditioned for Saturday Night Live. Boom. For the rest of the 90s, Saturday Night Live was on top of the comedy show. It was seeing a resurgence. The 90s were all about resurgence. Disney had a resurgence. Barry White had a resurgence. 70s music in general. Everything. The 90s, for me, in my opinion, they were the decade of Renaissance. Unfortunately, while many people loved Chris Farley had a hard time impressing himself. Sadly, that goes with a lot of movie stars or entertainers in the entertainment business. Whether you're a singer, comedian, or actor, it's difficult to impress yourself. I find that with everyday people as well. We work hard to impress others, but we don't impress ourselves. Chris Farley was no different. Chris Farley took those insecurities personally. Whenever Chris felt insecure, he turned to substances, alcohol and narcotics. And it got so bad that Lorne Michaels threatened him. He gave him a warning. He said, yep, I did this with John Belushi. We lost him. Well, I'm not going to do this again. You are going to get sober or you're out of the picture. I mean it. In the mid-90s, Chris seemed to be okay with films such as Black Sheep and Tommy Boy, which are, well, Chris was in a few films throughout the 90s, including Coneheads and Dirty Work, but Tommy Boy and Black Sheep and Beverly Hills Ninja, those were 3 movies where he was the leading man. Tommy Boy, instant classic. The Black Sheep was pretty cool. Beverly Hills Ninja, a lot of people got mixed reactions to, but Chris was very hard on himself when it came to the mixed reviews for Beverly Hills Ninja. Then, by 1997, the last year of his life, that's when his health really started declining. And you could tell in his last Saturday Night Live appearance, he hosted just a couple months before he died. And he was joined on stage when he introduced his opening monologue. When his opening monologue came up, he was joined by Tim Meadows and Chris Rock. And you could tell, you could hear him go, you could hear him huffing and puffing. You could obviously, people were already going, my God, something's amiss here with Chris. What's going on?